All right, let's get started. Good evening, everyone. Or good morning or good afternoon, depending on when you're watching this. You might be watching it live or watching a recording of it later. My name is Yolana Wassersug. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the recruitment and admissions manager here at King's, and I'm going to be your host tonight for this webinar session all about financial aid. Before we really dive in, maybe just a few housekeeping notes. Uh, I always like to start by just acknowledging where we are. I realize this is a webinar and we're meeting in a digital space rather than all in the same physical space. But I am here in Chibuktuk, which is also known by its English name, Halifax, right in Mi'kma'ki. Kings is located in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And the university is really committed to reconciliation in several ways. Some of those ways are relevant to financial aid, and we're going to talk about them tonight. I always find that when I'm doing these kinds of webinar events, it can be a little bit it can be a little bit weird on my end. I know that you can see me and hear me, but I can't see or hear you. So sometimes it feels a little bit like talking into the void. So no pressure. You do not have to do anything if you don't want to. But if you'd like to type into the chat and just say hi and where you're from, that's always reassuring because it kind of makes makes me feel a little bit like I'm not just talking to myself. Um, and I gotta say, here in Halifax, I bet there's some people logged in who are close to home here. It is a very snowy, cozy night, and I'm curled up in my office after hours, after all my coworkers are gone. So it's a little like spooky out here. Um, I can see that someone said hello from Ottawa. Oh, that's so nice of you. I'm so glad that we have some folks logged in from Ontario. And we also have someone from Philadelphia in the United States. Oh, that's awesome. I'm thrilled that there's some US students joining us as well. So thank you all for doing that. And if you feel like saying hello, you're more than welcome. Nice, Toronto. Okay, awesome. So I see that we have a few people logged in. I'll also just share a few other general housekeeping notes. One thing to say is that this webinar session is being recorded. And we will make this recording available to everyone who registered for it. So if something goes on, like if your Wi-Fi cuts out and you get booted off, then, don't worry about it. It's going to be okay. We'll send you a recording. Or if you just want to go back and look at the information again later, don't worry, we'll send you a recording. Uh, Tomorrow, which is Friday, February 7th, is a day off work from me. So I'm not sending you the recording tomorrow. I'm taking the day off. But I promise that before the end of the day on Monday, you'll have a recording of this webinar in your inbox, along with some other useful links and resources to help you out if you want to go over the stuff that we talked about tonight. Uh, so, oh my gosh, look at that. Folks from Bedford, Nova Scotia, Windsor, Ontario, Cumberland, Maine, Toronto. Wow, it's so nice to know who's out there listening tonight. So, I'm just going to start by sharing my screen. And I will say, tonight for this webinar, I'm sorry to say that y'all are stuck with just me presenting for you. Normally, when we do these financial aid webinars, two of my wonderful colleagues are also online to help provide some inside information. And both of those people had personal reasons that made it impossible for them to join us tonight. So I decided to just take over. But I just want to reassure you that there's a lot of friendly faces at King's that can help answer your questions about things related to tuition payments, student loans, bursaries, scholarships, financial aid. So, in the absence of my wonderful colleagues, Charlene and Kathy, I am just going to give you their contact information so that you know how to reach them. So, my name is Yolana. I'm the recruitment and admissions manager. If you'd like to reach me, my email address is on the King's website. I'll also put it into the chat. But the easiest way to reach me and my colleagues on the admissions team is just by emailing admissions@ukings.ca. So that's how you get in touch with me. The other people you might want to hear from are, oh, sorry about that, my colleague Charlene, who I'm just gonna, uh, I thought I had her profile open, but I'm just gonna open it up. Here we go. Charlene is the student accounts officer. And her email address, as you can see, is accounts@ukings.ca. And she is the person you want to go to if you have questions about tuition payments, student loans in Canada, um, and also just advice about like financial planning, making a budget. She is really an expert in those areas. The other person who you might want to hear from is Kathy Reed. And Kathy is responsible for bursaries, scholarships. She also is our expert on the US student loans. So for the US students, there's a couple of you logged in tonight. She's going to be your go-to person if you have questions about FAFSA and how that connects to Canada. And as you can see, awards@ukings.ca is her email. So accounts@ukings.ca or awards@ukings.ca are the two really helpful email addresses to reach people on campus who are experts in these subject areas. All right. This is the homepage of our website. And what I'm going to do tonight, I'm not doing a PowerPoint presentation. What I'd really like to do is just show you where you can go on our website to find the types of information you might be looking for. So if you're at ukings.ca, I'll just give a shout out right now. You might notice that the home button right in the middle of the screen is reminding you that we have an open house event coming up. Our winter open house is on February 22nd, which is just a few Saturdays from now. So Saturday, February 22nd, that'll be a really nice day on campus. Hopefully we'll have beautiful weather and it's a great time to see the campus, to take a campus tour, meet professors and current students, learn more about the university. If you are in grade 12 and you have not already applied to King's, if you come to our winter open house, we'll waive your application fee so you can apply for free. So there's lots of good reasons to consider coming. If you're someone who is already in Nova Scotia or can get to Halifax, or you're not too far away, please come to Winter Open House. When we're talking about financial aid, we're really talking about a package of things, a range of things that can include scholarships, bursaries, loans, part-time jobs, the whole picture of how you finance your education. All of those things combined is your financial aid package. Now, scholarships are really their own separate category. And we actually recently had a whole other webinar just to talk about scholarships. So I'm not going to spend too much time tonight diving into the subject of scholarships. But I will just sort of touch on them briefly. And I'm just going to note, I did see that someone asked a question in the chat about if there's going to be any other open house events in the next coming months. The winter open house is our last open house that's relevant to students who would be entering King's in September of 2025. But we always do one in October of each year and February of each year. Oh, and I should have said this up top. I apologize. I'm going to make sure that there's time at the end to ask questions as well. So I might not monitor all the questions while we're presenting, but if you do have questions, please feel free to type them in. You can use that chat feature if you want to, if it's easier for you. And I will say that the Zoom also has a really nice Q&A feature, which is helpful for keeping all the questions organized. So either way, feel free to type in your questions and I promise we'll get to them. Right. Okay, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second, but let me show you where we want to go. So if we're on the home screen of our website and you hit admissions in the main menu, you'll see a tab called Finances, and there's a couple useful things in here. So all the information about scholarships and awards can be found in this tab. Scholarships for new undergraduate students will be the ones that are probably the most relevant to the people who are listening to this webinar. And we have a couple different kinds of scholarships at King's. General entrance awards, you're just assessed for automatically as long as you apply to the university before March 1st. We also have another category of award called called a major award. And with the major awards, there actually is a supplemental application to be considered. And the deadline for that is March 1st as well. So that deadline is coming up pretty soon. If you're someone who hasn't given any thought yet to the major scholarship application, I would strongly encourage you to do that now. So that's the scholarships piece. And like I said, we just recently did a webinar about scholarships. If you want to go back and watch it, you can find it on our YouTube channel or email me and I'll send you the link. Tonight, I want to focus more on other types of financial aid. And so you can see there's the financial aid tab on our website here. And if I click on that, we've got a couple of available resources. that you might want to consider. Scholarships are the first ones that are listed. And then we have information about bursaries, student loans, tuition waivers, student employment, or basically part-time jobs while you're studying, and information about external funding as well. So in tonight's webinar, we're going to go through these categories, starting with bursaries, and talk through what you can expect and how it works. I know universities often throw terminology around and just assume that everybody knows what we're talking about. I'm going to try my best not to do that. And if you catch me using terms and phrases that you're like, I don't really know what that means, don't be shy about telling me. You can let me know that you need me to define a term. So let's talk about the difference between a scholarship and a bursary, because those are two key terms that get tossed around a lot when you're looking into universities. Fundamentally, the difference between a scholarship and a bursary is that one is based on merit and the other is based on need. So a scholarship is based on your achievements or things that are intrinsic to who you are as a person and your success story. The scholarships at King's, many of them are based on your grades. But we also have scholarships at King's that are based on other qualities about you as a person. So that could be things like your extracurriculars that you're involved in. It could be things like your volunteerism or commitment to your community. It could be things about who you are as an individual. So some of our scholarships have criteria that are based on race or ethnicity. Some of them are specifically for Black students, Indigenous students, African Nova Scotian students, for example. So that's what a scholarship is. They're based on who you are as a person and also on your accomplishments. A bursary, in contrast, is just based on financial need. So for a bursary, we're usually not looking at your grades when we assess you for a bursary. We're just getting a sense of what your financial picture is and what resources you need to be able to attend university. We have a couple of different types of bursaries at King's, but conveniently, most of them all have the same application form. So that makes it a lot simpler. And with bursaries, usually there is not a really strict deadline. Usually you can apply for a bursary kind of when you need to, and we assess them on a rolling basis. There are occasionally exceptions to this, and I'll highlight some of them as we go. So starting with general bursaries, just general needs-based bursaries. And you'll see it says right here, entrance and in-course. So that means entrance bursaries are bursaries given to a new student who's starting out their degree. An in-course bursary means a bursary given to a student who's in the progress of their degree, like maybe at the end of first year, going into second year, you realize you need some more financial support. You might apply for a bursary at that time. If you're planning to, if you need to, if you want to, if it's the right thing for your financial plan, um, and you need a bursary every year, you're reapplying every year. So you're filling out a new bursary application form each year to be considered. And as it says right here, decisions are made on a rolling basis. There's some information about exactly how to apply. And in just a moment, I'm going to click on this application form so we can take a look together at what is in that application form and give you a chance to think ahead about the application process. But before I do that, I want to highlight a few other kinds of bursaries that all use this same application form. So general bursaries are literally just for anybody, whether they're an incoming student or a student in progress during their degree, whether they are a domestic student or an international student who has some financial need. That's it. Then we have one that is brand new, and this is called the Joyce Family Foundation Bursary. We are extremely excited about the Joyce Family Foundation Bursary. It is exceptionally new at King's. The official press release announcing that it exists, I'm just going to open that up for you, is this press release. You can see it was published less than 10 business days ago as of the date of the recording of this webinar. So this thing is brand new. And honestly, I'll tell you the truth, I'm still learning about what our application process is going to be for it, but I can tell you everything that I know right now, which is great. So this is a pretty substantial bursary, the largest one that King's currently has. It's valued at $20,000 or $5,000 a year. It will be given to 2 students each year. And in order to meet the criteria for this award, you do have to be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident. So this particular bursary is not open to international students. As you can see, it says priority will be given to students from the Maritimes. And the criteria is that we're looking for students who have faced significant financial barriers, but have a demonstrated ability to overcome obstacles and adversity. And unlike our other bursaries, this Joyce Foundation bursary is a little bit unique in its structure because the two students who receive this bursary will be matched with a mentor who can provide them with guidance and support throughout their degree. So that's quite a unique bursary. And like I said, it is brand new. So we've got the general bursaries. Those are for anybody. We have the Joyce Foundation bursaries, which are specifically for Canadian students with priority to students in the Maritimes. And then we have the International Student Bursary, which is open to any international student. And the good news is all three of those things use the same application form, which you can see right here. So this is our general University of King's College bursary application form. It's a PDF form that you fill out, download, and you submit by emailing it to awards@ukings.ca. So it goes right into Kathy's inbox. And here's what you can expect to see when you fill it out. You'll notice that you can click which awards you're interested in being considered for. You can click more than one. So let's say hypothetically, I'm a Canadian student and I want to be assessed for the big $5,000 a year Joyce Family Foundation bursary. But I also want to be assessed for any general entrance awards. You'll notice there's a nice little asterisk up here, and the fine print says, those who are not successful, oh, sorry about that. Those who are not successful in their application to the Joyce bursary will also be considered for other bursaries available. So you don't need to fill out a separate application form. The first page is just basic information, your name, your email address, your student number. If you don't know your student number, it's on your acceptance letter. So if you've applied to King's and been admitted, you have a student number and it's on your acceptance letter. This bursary form also asks if you've applied for a loan, when you did that, and what the status is of your loan application. You applying for a loan is one of the key ways that King's knows if you are someone with demonstrable financial need. We'll talk a little bit more about student loans later in this presentation, but I will highlight that typically students need to be getting a loan in order to be eligible for bursaries. And then you'll notice that the bursary application is basically broken down like a balance sheet. So in order to fill it out, you do need to get a little bit of granular detail about your specific financial circumstances. On this side of the form, we're going to fill out areas that relate to what it costs to go to university. So you'll fill in what your tuition is, what you expect your residence fees or meal plan to be if you're living on campus, an estimated cost of your books and supplies. Or if you live off campus, you'll put in what 8 months of your rent costs, your food, utilities, other miscellaneous expenses, and you'll add it up. That's what it costs to go to university for a year. Meanwhile, on this side of the form, you'll fill in any details that you have about resources that you're already planning to use to help finance your education. So that could be things like your savings from previous jobs that you've had. If there is a generous person in your family who's contributing to the cost of your education. If you have an RESP, a registered education savings plan that you have access to, any other scholarships you may have, your loan assessment, if you already have that. If you don't have it at the time you fill out this form, that's okay. Just you need to let us know that you've applied. Or any other income you're putting towards your education. So basically you tally up this side of the sheet, that's the resources you have. You tally up this side of the sheet, that's what it costs. And the difference between those two categories is a difference that universities refer to as unmet need. The purpose of a bursary is to try to reduce that amount of unmet need. In this webinar tonight, I can't give you a prediction at all of what kind of bursary you might receive from the university. Because as you can see from this application form, each bursary application is going to be super specific to you and your circumstances. Everyone's budget is different. Everyone's plans for how they're going to finance their education are different. And so the amounts of bursaries that are given out at the university have a lot of variation in them. There's some students at King's that are getting a bursary that's like $500 a term, and there's some students that are getting bursaries to the tune of several thousands of dollars. So it can really vary. So you fill out that budget sheet. The next section of the application is right here. There's a little text box. You have a maximum of 500 words. That's not a lot of words. You do not need to be verbose. You can be pretty concise. In this text box, you're going to say a little bit about why you think you're eligible for a financial needs-based award. And the very last section of the application form is your basically your declaration that what you said is true, where you have a little checkbox or true to the very best of your knowledge. And this part is new. It's only relevant to the folks applying for the Joyce Family Foundation bursary. But for this section, you do need a letter of reference. And the referee who you choose can email a letter of reference on your behalf to awards@ukings.ca. Now, one good question you might have about this is what kind of person would be a good referee? So the referee that you choose should be someone who knows a lot about who you are as a person. They know about your particular circumstances in life, and they can speak about your readiness to take on university education, your resiliency, your ability to overcome challenges. So depending on who you are, the person you ask to be your reference is going to really vary. It might be your very favorite teacher at high school who you really trust and confide in. It might be your guidance counselor. It could be another person in your life, your employer at your part-time job, someone who you worked with in a volunteer capacity, could be a social worker who's part of your life, or even a family friend who has a lot of familiarity with you. So lots of variation with who that letter of reference might come from. I would say of all the parts of the Joyce Foundation Award application, probably the letter of reference is the part that's like the biggest deal. And if you're planning ahead for, all the steps you want to do to apply for these types of awards, I would strongly recommend that a good starting point would be to sit down and think about who would be a good referee for me, and can I go ask that person to write me this letter of reference? When you go ask that person to write this letter of reference, send them the link to the press release that I shared with you that announced this bursary so that they have a little sense of what the bursary is all about. And then ask them to write a letter on your behalf and email it to awards@ukings.ca. That would be a great first step if you're planning to apply for that award. So that's the bursary application form in a nutshell. Bursaries, like I said, are assessed on a rolling basis. If you want to do them earlier, you can. If you want to wait till later after you've done your loan application, especially for the general bursaries, you can. Now, that, as you can see, the general bursary, the Joyce Family Foundation bursary, and the International Student Bursary are all on one application form. We also have another form of bursary that does not sit on that application form. And this is what's called the Urgent Needs Bursary Program. So the Urgent Need Bursary Program is a little bit unique because for this particular bursary, you don't need to be someone who has a loan. You don't need to be someone who is generally considered to be someone who has financial need. You could be someone who normally has a pretty balanced budget and has, usually has a pretty easy time with managing affording university education. However, maybe there is an urgent situation that has come up in your life. So, for example, maybe you are a student who has a part-time job, but the part-time job changed its hours and now you can't work your shift anymore because that shift conflicts with a class that you need to take. And so you had to drop that job and now you lost that piece of your budget. That's a bummer. That's an urgent situation. Or another example is maybe you're a student who comes from Ontario and in your budget, you are planning to travel home during the winter break and travel home at the end of the year, but you do not have money in your budget for another trip home. And then you find out that a relative you love is ill and you need to go home to visit them, right? And you have to figure out how you're going to buy a plane ticket really quickly. The Urgent Needs Bursary Program is for circumstances like those. These bursaries are smaller amounts, usually around $500. They're paid directly into the student's bank account. We process them fast so that the money gets into the student's bank account quickly. And the only thing you need to do to apply is email awards@ukings.ca and explain what the situation is. And my colleague Kathy handles those requests with all the confidentiality that she is known for and respected for on our campus. So that's how the Urgent Need Bursary Program works. There's a few other pieces that I'll highlight. We do also have other pools of funding for students doing international travel or exchanges to other areas. There's more about that on this website. I won't go into too much detail. So that's bursaries. From there, I'd like to move forward. So we've got scholarships, bursaries. I'll come back to student loans, I think. Let's talk about waivers. Pardon me. Okay. Tuition waivers. Tuition waivers are different than scholarships and bursaries. They're a whole other category. Tuition waivers are where there is a specific group of students where we feel at King's that we want to significantly reduce their tuition or remove it altogether by giving them a substantial waiver. And the waivers that we have at King's do tend to fit into pretty niche categories. I want to highlight them just in case there's anyone listening who fits these categories, but I recognize that these waivers don't apply to absolutely everyone. They are about reaching targeted groups and reducing barriers for those groups. So the first one on the list here is the Mi'kmaq journalism tuition waiver. If you are Mi'kmaq, you're from Mi'kma'ki, um, and if you are applying to any of the three journalism programs at King's, so that's the Bachelor of Journalism Honors, which is our 4-year undergraduate journalism program, the Bachelor of Journalism Advanced 1-year program, or the Master of Journalism program, you are eligible for this tuition waiver, which covers your entire tuition uh, and your mandatory fees. This is a pretty new waiver at King's. You can read a lot more about how to apply, and you can also learn more about all the supports that exist for Indigenous students at King's. So that tuition waiver is one to be aware of. The next one on the list, this one is brand new. We launched this one this year. The first group of students who will benefit from this tuition waiver are students who are starting this September, September 2025. So this particular bursary is for a specific sliver of international students. These are students, international students who are part of NSISP, the Nova Scotia International Student Program. So they are international students who already came to Nova Scotia and were attending high school here through the Nova Scotia International Student Program. For those international students, instead of paying international tuition rates, they are paying domestic tuition rates. We are doing a waiver of their international differential, which is a pretty substantial waiver. So there's really nothing special that you need to do to apply for this award if you're an NSISP student. You do need to select that you're an NSISP student on the question on our application form, and then we reach out to the organization NSISP and we verify that the accuracy of that information with them. So we check to make sure that you actually are an NSISP student. The post-care tuition waiver. We have 2 of these to give out every year. This is a waiver that covers all tuition and fees. It's renewable for up to 4 years. And it is a waiver that is for any student that has lived for at least 1 year or more within the child welfare system. We tend to give preference to Nova Scotian students, or students in the Maritimes, but really any student that as part of the child welfare system for at least a year is eligible for these awards. And there's some additional, or these waivers, I should say, there's some additional information about how to apply. I strongly suspect that the people who are listening to me doing this recording right now are not over 65 years of age. But if you are a senior citizen who's over 65 years of age, there's also some waivers that are available for you as well. So those are the tuition waivers. And right, we've covered bursary. We've covered waivers. Let's talk about loans because loans are an important piece of the puzzle. There's information on our loans page about loans in Canada and in the United States. I know I've got some American folks listening, so I'll try to get to that American information as well. Canadian student loan procedures are pretty straightforward. Basically, there's two types of loan programs in Canada. There's ones that are administered federally, and there's ones that are administered provincially. But the good news is you only need to fill out one application form. So you apply through your province, and then your province takes the necessary steps for your application to go through the federal process as well. We encourage you to apply early, pardon me, at least 2 months before the start of your school term. You are going to apply through the province that you're a permanent resident of or where you most recently lived. So we have links on our website to all the provinces and territories. You can click on the loan program that's relevant to your province. Loans from any provincial program can be used at any university across Canada. I cannot believe how often I've met students from Ontario that did not apply for Ontario Student Assistance Program for OSAP because they thought that they couldn't because they were going to a university outside of Ontario. Pardon me. So that's a myth. So apply. Sorry, folks, it's February in Nova Scotia, and I'm gonna take a cough lozenge. Okay. If you have questions about Canada student loans, reach out to Charlene. She will help you. accounts@ukings.ca. American loan procedures. You apply through FAFSA, the federal application for student aid. You do that online. Your FAFSA loans can come across the border into Canada. However, the Pell Grant cannot cross the border. So that's an important piece to keep in mind. The FAFSA expert on our campus is Kathy Reed. So any questions about the FAFSA process? Oh gosh, I was worried this would happen. Any questions about the FAFSA process, go to Kathy at awards@ukings.ca. It is exactly the same as it would be if you were going to school in country as going across the border. There's really no difference at all. That's loans. I think the last thing I'll say about loans is that loans can be a scary word. When we talk about a student loan, I think for a lot of people that's a four-letter word. It really strikes fear in their heart. The idea of being in debt after going to university is something that causes a lot of panic and worry for students, and we understand that. So I know that hearing me talk about loans this much might be making you feel anxious, and that's not the goal here. The thing to know about loans, student loans, and this is especially true in the Canadian system, is that student loans, when you apply, that's one of the ways that we at the university can know that you're a student with financial need, and it helps us assess you for bursaries. When you apply for loans, often you're told that based on your financial scenario, you are going to receive X number of dollars in loan money and Y number of dollars in grant money, in grants that you don't need to pay back. And a lot of times students are surprised by how much grant money is available to them. If you apply for a loan so that you can find out that information, so you can find out what your loan would be, what you're eligible for, and what your grant would be, you're just giving yourself more information that you can use for your own financial planning. You don't need to take it, right? So if you apply for a loan and you're eligible, but then you decide, no, that's not for me, I don't want to be in debt, I don't want to take that loan, you don't have to, right? But we do encourage you to consider applying for a loan because it gives you information that you didn't have before that you can use when you're making decisions about your financial plan. So do keep that in mind. Also, and I think this is especially true in Canada, there's going to be a lot of variation province by province. Different provinces have different procedures, but many provinces have policies where student loans don't need to be repaid right away. Usually students get 6 months, 12 months, maybe even more before they have to start repaying loans after they graduate. Some provinces have full loan debt forgiveness programs, which is wonderful. So it's worth it to factor that in. And also keep in mind that student loan debt is not the same as credit card debt. There's types of debt that are potentially more place more challenges on your credit rating than others. And loans are a pretty low risk form of debt, student loans are. So those are all things to keep in mind. Okay, back here. So we mentioned scholarships, we've talked about bursaries, we've talked about loans, we've talked about waivers. The last few pieces that I want to touch on before we open up to questions are student employment and external funding. Student employment. Lots of students at King's work on campus while they're employed. Typically about 1/3 of the student population will have a job on campus at some point during their degree. And lots of students also work off campus as well. If you're looking for student job opportunities, the student employment page on our website has current listings for any open jobs that are available at that time. And it always changes. There's lots of new job opportunities that pop up. So for example, if we look today, we'll see that we have some job postings for junior dons to work in our residences, to work at the front desk of Alex Hall, which is our largest residence building. It's the building that you can see in the picture behind me in my Zoom window. We have jobs open for student patrol staff. The patroller are like friendly nightlife campus support who patrol the campus during the evening hours to make sure people are having fun and being safe and respecting each other. There's even a really interesting position for a journalism student to be a content creator for a company. So there's a couple of really interesting student postings that are currently available, but like I said, these change all the time. There's also a few other pieces that are of interest. The Student Assistantship Program, or SAP, matches King's students with King's faculty and professors and gives them 30 hours over the course of a term to be a research assistant to that professor and work with them on a research project. This is a great part-time job. It builds a lot of skills. It's a great way to learn more about what the professors are working on. My first part-time job on campus when I was a King student was as a student assistant to a faculty member, and I loved it and I learned so much. There's also several student-run businesses on campus. The bookstore, the Wardy, which is our campus bar slash lounge, and the Galley, which is our coffee shop. All of those are student-owned and operated businesses that hire students. And then we have our fellowships in public humanities, which are summer internship opportunities, and the Scotia Scholars Award, which places students in research positions in areas of health research. So quite a few really interesting fellowships and internships that are available to students. I'll just highlight that we also have this nice resource, which is a student workbook. You can download the workbook if you want to. We encourage you to. If you have a job on campus, any kind of job on campus, this workbook is going to give you some prompts and things to think about. If you're someone who likes journaling, I bet, will be really into it. And really the goal of this workbook is to give you some skills to think about all the stuff that you are doing in your part-time job, all of the skills you're learning, and start planning ahead for how you're going to pitch yourself on your resumes and job applications for your future career. We really want to teach you some skills so that you can take the jobs you're doing on campus and translate those into workplace skills that will be useful for you when you graduate. So the student workbook is really all about helping you think along those lines and build up those skills. And last but not least, external funding. There's scholarships and bursaries that are administered by King's, but there's also all sorts of pools of money that are external to King's that you may be interested in exploring. Some students have an RESP. Usually you need to reach out to your bank to get access to that money after you register for courses in June. Typically, your bank is going to ask for some documentation to prove that you're registered. Usually they ask for one of three things, either a form called a confirmation of enrollment, or an invoice for your tuition, or that bank may have some kind of specific form that's that's their own customized thing that they want you to fill out. The confirmation of enrollment and the invoice, students can print those out and download them themselves through their online student account. We will show you how. If you have any questions about it, don't worry. You can email and we'll show you how. Or if your bank has given you some kind of specific form that they want you to fill out so that you can access your RESP, bring it to my office, bring it to the registrar's office, or email it to us. We will help you fill it out. And if you are looking around for external scholarships, so scholarships that are being given out by other organizations, there are a lot of them out there, and we encourage you to look for them. This is a list, especially a kind of very Canadian list, but there's a lot out there. This is a list of websites that have information about various types of scholarships that are available to students. King's doesn't specifically endorse these websites. We just think that they're good resources. I know students who have found really, really cool scholarship opportunities on the Universities Canada site, the Scholarships Canada site, Wyconic. A lot of these are websites where you put in details about yourself, and then it'll help you search through different types of scholarships that exist that match up with who you are. You would not believe how much scholarship money is out there that does not get claimed every single year. And some of them are hyper specific. Like, did you know that there are specific scholarships for people who have type 1 diabetes or Crohn's and colitis? Like, those are very difficult, painful, awful things to deal with. But the fact that there's scholarship money out there, if that describes you, if that is a specific pocket of the population that you're in, you should find out about those awards and apply for them. Some pro tips, if you or a parent or a grandparent are a veteran, there may very well be scholarship money that you can apply for. Your parent or guardian's workplace might have human resources policies where there are scholarships for children of employees. You should ask your parent or guardian about that. If you are part of a religious community, your church, synagogue, mosque, temple might have scholarships available for you. So those are all avenues that you can look into if you're trying to track down some funding. So with that, I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen, open it up to questions. Oh, sorry, no, not quite. I know I've been talking for a long time. The very last thing I just want to show you, because it's helpful, is our payments guide. The payments guide has information about when and how to pay tuition fees. Currently, it has the dates for 2024-25. It'll get updated to the dates for 2025-26. Don't you worry about that. But it has a lot of useful information. This is one last piece that I want to be sure to mention, which is accessing financial information. The way it works, and this is according to federal law here in Canada, is that the university needs to protect your confidentiality. So if you're a student, we cannot talk about your financial record, your student account balance, or your tuition payments with anyone unless you explicitly give us permission. And this is important because we definitely have students who would like it. They would make it easier for them if their parent or guardian could ask questions about their financial information on their behalf or pay their tuition on their behalf. So if that describes you, you do need to follow these steps. You need to reach out to accounts@ukings.ca, include your name, your student ID number, and include the name and email address of the parent or guardian or whomever it is that you're authorizing to have access to your financial information. If you don't take that step, we can't disclose any of that information to another party. All right, so let's see what's in the questions field here that we can address. Okay, so we had a question here from someone who said, RESP amount would divide that by 4 years. Yes, usually this depends on your bank or financial institution, but your RESP amount is usually doled out and divided. I mean, not even just by 4 years, but by term, right? Because tuition payments happen at the term. The next question is, are bursaries grants or do you have to pay them back? Bursaries are grants. Yeah, you do not have to pay them back. They are one of the ways the university is helping to reduce your costs and meet your unmet need. Oh, I see. I think I may have misunderstood a question earlier about RESPs. I think the person who was asking it was what you were trying to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you were saying is on the bursary application form, do you divide up the RESP amount by 4 years? Yes, that is how you would fill out the bursary application form. However, if you have any questions about filling out the bursary application form, just reach out to awards@ukings.ca. Right. Okay, we have a couple other questions coming in through the Q&A, which is great. Thank you, everyone who's asking questions. I really appreciate it. So one attendee is asking, at what point and how do students apply for student assistant program? Will openings appear on the site's page when they become available? Yes, you can apply. Usually the openings do appear on the site when they become available, but also you can reach out to the person on campus who administers that program is Lee Gillis. So you can reach out to her and ask, and she'll give you details. That would be one of the main things. Then we've got a question about the major differences between a TA and campus student jobs aside from field of responsibility. Okay. King's, first of all, campus student jobs, there's campus student jobs that are open to first-year students, second-year students, whereas being a TA or teaching assistant is something that you're very unlikely to be hired to do unless you're at least in third year, usually third or fourth year. So being a teaching assistant is something that would be, mostly done by a more advanced student. At King's, there are very few classes that have teaching assistants. And a lot of those teaching assistants are like graduate students at Dalhousie, or recent alumni. So it's not that common to be an undergraduate student who has a TA-ship. Other types of campus jobs, however, may very well be open to undergraduate students, including first-year students. That's a great question. Wow. Well, we cleared through a bunch of questions. I'm going to stay online for a little while, just in case there's someone else typing a question right now and thinking of what they want to say. I know you've heard a lot of me talking, and also, I apologize, a lot of me coughing. Like I said, it's February, there's viruses going around. I have a daycare age toddler. He brings home viruses every day. It's really exciting. Okay, so there's a question here that says, we mentioned starting the loan application at least 2 months before you start your term. So how do we get a loan date for the bursary form? This is a great question. A lot of people wait and apply for bursaries later. So a lot of people apply for loans first and then bursaries. However, if you want to get started on the bursary application and you have not applied for a loan yet, just say on the bursary application, I haven't applied for a loan yet, I plan to. Just give us the details you can. If we need to ask you for more information or we want to follow up and find out more information, we will. This is a pretty small university, so a lot of communication is going to happen on a pretty one-on-one basis where we will reach out. So if you want to get started on that bursary application, go ahead and get started, fill out the information you can, and then email it to awards@ukings.ca. And then when Kathy is sitting down to assess that bursary application, if she needs more information from you, she'll just ask for it. It's going to be that simple. Okay. So I'll throw a few useful email addresses in the chat. I know I've mentioned them a few times already, but awards@ukings.ca. That's where you're going to ask your questions about the bursary application process, about scholarships. That's also how you reach Kathy with your questions about US student loans. Then accounts@ukings.ca. That's how you reach Charlene with your questions about Canadian student loans, tuition payments, budgeting, and for kind of anything else admissions@ukings.ca reaches me and my team. Or if you have questions about things like academic advising and academic planning, I know that wasn't the focus of tonight's webinar, but it might be on your mind. Registrar@ukings.ca for that. And we got one other question that came into the chat, and I think this is going to be the last one for tonight. So this question is, in case you are eligible for a student loan but choose not to take the loan and instead a general bursary from the university because it doesn't need to be paid back, are you still able to take it? Or do you need to accept both the bursary from the school and the loans from your province? Okay. Very good question. And I know that I'm about to give you a disappointing answer. The disappointing answer is case-by-case basis. This is all extremely personal information. So we're going to be taking a look at the whole picture, that whole balance sheet that you fill out, and doing our very best to assess what your need situation is. If you have substantial need and you've applied for a loan, but there's reasons why you've chosen not to take that loan, and you can express those reasons in some way on your bursary application form or by emailing awards@ukings.ca, then exceptions can always be made. So usually people need to have a loan to get a bursary. That's usually the case, but there's always examples of students who don't exactly fit into that mold. And we do everything we can to try to see those individuals and respond to their needs. So that's sort of the goal of the whole bursary program, is to help reduce unmet need and help students out. And we know that students are not cookie cutter. They don't always have the same circumstances. And especially when it comes to financing your education, your plan and your pathway for how you finance your education is exactly as unique as you are. It's exactly as unique as your thumbprint. So it's not going to be the same for everybody. I hope that helps. I know that that can be a little disappointing, especially when you're logging onto a webinar to try to get reassuring information and some concrete information. But the best I can tell you is that fill out the information you can, tell us what's going on with you, let us try to make an informed decision about how to help. Yeah. Amazing. Well, I'm so grateful to you all for choosing to log on tonight and learn a little bit more about financial aid. Before I wrap up, I'll just remind you, we also did a whole webinar about scholarships. If you want to listen to even more of me talking, you can watch that one too. For the scholarship webinar, it wasn't just me. I was also online with Dr. Sarah Clift, who is the faculty member who's the chair of the scholarship committee and also the university's vice president. So she had some really helpful tips about filling out your scholarship application. You can find that on our YouTube channel. I'll also reiterate that I will send you a link to this webinar recording before the end of the day on Monday. And please do email us with any questions you have. We really do want to hear what's going on with you and help. Oh, and I guess the last thing I should say is, golly gee, if you haven't applied to King's yet and you're planning to come here this September, that is the first step. You cannot get scholarships or bursaries unless you have applied to the university and been admitted. So please, please do that. Please do it before March 1st. That's the scholarship deadline. All right, everyone. Thank you again for logging in. I look forward to answering all your questions in the future, and have a great night.